Welcome back, everyone. We are talking about guns and gun safety, gun laws in Tennessee, the executive actions recently taken by President Obama. We have with us Beth Jocelyn Ross from the Safe Tennessee Project. Other times we have with us from the Tennessee Firearms Association, John Harris. So we're happy to have with us tonight Beth Jocelyn Ross. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Jay. Hello, Jay.
Good evening.
Go right ahead.
First of all, I want to agree with that. Like with your guest, I agree with her. I do have a carry permit. I am educated on my gun and all that, and I grew up around guns, and I do like to target practice. But, my sister had a good friend who had a crazy boyfriend, and he had a lot of, he was in jail for a while, but he got out, and come to find out, he bought a gun from a guy who wasn't even licensed. They trailed the gun back to him. It's stuff like that just drives me crazy. And I just wondered, I hope she's working on that on these mentally ill people. And I just wondered what her thoughts were. Thanks.
On the mental illness side of this. Okay, thank you for the call. What about that?
Yeah, that is something that concerns us. But, what's interesting is that although mental illness certainly does, that is something that we think about with gun violence prevention. What we also know is that most often people who are mentally ill tend to more often than not be the victim of violent crime as opposed to the perpetrator of violent crime. But that being said, clearly in the situation that the caller brought up, there are other remedies out there. There are things like gun violence restraining orders that some states are looking to pass right now. California passed a gun violence restraining order last year. And what a gun violence restraining order would do is allow an immediate family member or law enforcement officer to petition a judge. And if they felt that someone close to them met a certain criteria of risk, substance abuse, right? Things that are known predictors of violence, like substance abuse, previous violence, anger, things like that, that they could petition a judge and have the judge issue a temporary restraining order that would prohibit that person from being able to purchase guns and would temporarily remove guns from that person's home for about 21 days.
It seems like both sides can agree in this debate, where they can't agree on much, that we need to do more in the mental health arena.
Absolutely.
And it would be nice if both sides could come together. Maybe this discussion could lead to some help in that department.
Absolutely. I mean, as just a regular citizen, I am very concerned about mental health just in the population in general, and the fact that, over the last several decades there's been a decrease in funding for mental health. And, I want to see anybody who is struggling to be able to receive the services that they need. Specifically in a state like Tennessee, where we have 600 people a year that use a gun to kill themselves, suicide is a big issue, right? And so, anything that can help us reduce those kinds of numbers, I'm for 100%. But in response to the caller, something like a gun violence restraining order would have been something that could have kept that guy from being able to purchase that gun.
All right, let's go. We have several calls. Let's go back to the phones. Philip. Hello, Philip.
Hey, good evening.
Go right ahead.
I'm going to quickly tell you what happened to me on December 12th of last year. And I will get to my point immediately after that.
Okay.
I just relocated to a new residence where I'm sharing a home with someone. I pay rent there. I'm walking from my vehicle to my front door. People a couple of houses down have a dog. Didn't know it, but the pit bull, they let it out. The dog comes after me. I'm trying to ward this dog off with a piece of wood. The female owner of the dog comes out, and instead of getting her dog, which I'm just yelling for somebody to get this dog and help me, she cusses me and, up and down and yada, yada, yada. And that situation resolves itself. She finally gets her dog. About 30 minutes later, I'm walking back out to my vehicle, and her thug boyfriend approaches me and shoves a gun in my face, a black handgun. I call the police. My roommate informs me at that point, he knows who he is. The guy is a convicted felon. Police did absolutely nothing. They never detained him. They never handcuffed him. They never searched him. They never tried to recover his gun. I learned something at that very moment, and that's this. The federal government, the state government, local government will never protect me. You know whose job it is to protect me? It's my job to protect me. I never in a million years thought that on December 12th, a felon thug would shove a gun in my face over merely me walking from my vehicle into my home.
So where does that put you as far as this discussion? Does that mean
gun control will not protect anyone? Who is it going to protect? Give me an example of a mass shooting. We always hear about these mass shootings. Give me an example of a mass shooter who got a hold of a gun who could not have passed a background check.
All right, well, let's talk about who it would protect. So you heard Philip there. What are some things we could pass, in your opinion, that would protect people, that would save lives?
Well, I think it's important to note that the measures that President Obama discussed, they might not prevent another mass shooting, and mass shootings are horrible. Mass shootings are very jarring, but mass shootings actually do make up a small percentage of the amount of gun violence that we see in our country. There are things that we can do to tighten up our background check system. For example, the young man in Charleston that shot the parishioners at that church, he should not have been given that gun. He should not have passed the background check. He wouldn't have passed it, but there was the 3-day window that allowed him to obtain that gun. The man in Lafayette, Louisiana, he had a history, an extensive history of breaking the law, of doing things that should have made him a prohibited purchaser, and yet he was still able to get a gun. So I think there's definitely things that we can do to strengthen our existing background check system. And to what the caller brought up, in terms of what happened to that man who pointed the gun at him, I think that is an area where we can find common ground, because people like myself, we want to see the laws enforced also. If anything, I would like to see some stiffer penalties for people who are caught with guns, using them illegally, or who are in possession of a gun that was lost or stolen. And also, I'm concerned about how that man who had the gun, who was a felon, how did he get that gun, and what can we do to prevent him from getting that gun? We're not going to be able to prevent everybody who's a bad guy from getting a gun, but if we can prevent a few people, then we feel like that's a step in the right direction.
Let's go to Carol. Hello, Carol.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I have a couple thoughts. One is, more laws are not going to solve the problem. You have to do something with the laws we have on the books. Change them, tweak them, move your commas, whatever you guys want to do. But more laws are just going to confuse the ones that need to enforce it, which is the police officers. They're not lawyers, they're not judges, but they're the ones trying to go out and enforce the laws that everybody else is putting on the books. And my second point was, when I relocated down here 20 years ago, first thing I did was call and ask, where do I register my weapons?
Right.
They didn't want my guns registered. My whole life, I've had to register guns, new or used. It didn't matter how old it is. I've got a Colt back from the riot days of Detroit that my aunt gave me as a gift. She owned it then. And it was always been registered. And they didn't want it registered. All guns should be registered. Pistols, at least, they're handguns. They're easily hideable, accessible. And if they're not registered, people are just going to pass them and pass $50 and keep passing that dirty gun down the line.
So that's an example where you think something more should be done.
When it comes to the guns themselves, more should be done. On the other hand, you got to enforce with the laws you do have.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Carol. Thank you. We have a ton of calls. All right. What do you want to say to that?
Well, I mean, I agree with Carol on a lot of that. You know, in terms of the enforcing the laws on the books and tweaking language in laws, I'm 100% for that. I have a lot of friends who are prosecutors, and what I've learned from hanging out with my friends in the DA's office is that a lot of times, if a law is not crystal clear, a prosecutor won't prosecute a case because they don't feel like they can get a conviction. And in a lot of ways, that's exactly what President Obama was trying to do with his executive actions regarding people who are engaged in the business. He was trying to provide some clarification to allow ATF agents to be able to catch more of these people and actually bring them to justice.
We're going to talk about those executive actions, hiring more ATF agents, and some of the other things that were a part of that. We'll take a break and we'll get to more calls. We'll be back right after this.